So we're going to continue now. Thank you for the questions. We have Saundra Morene, and she is with the Jacksonville Gullah Geechee Nation, CDC. And she'll tell us what all that means.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's such a pleasure for me to be here with you today, and I'm very happy to see that we are moving along with the knowledge of Gullah Geechee culture in Jacksonville. Jacksonville is a huge place, and at the time of the Civil War, it was said to have had about 100 plantations. Those plantations have been, we've found them all over the city. And we've also found Gullah Geechee communities that are still in just about the same geographical area with the same individuals that came from the plantations who lived very close. Ennis gave you a great presentation this morning, sort of showed you where all of those plantations were. Where all of the Gullah Geechee communities are. We have done collaborations with a number of organizations. We have been in existence, Jacksonville Gullah Geechee Nation, CDC, has been in existence since 2008. I think we started talking about 2006, but we've been a 501c3 since 2010. And what we do is we go into those communities and give them the information so that they can self-identify and kind of use, through an oral history model, a sense of community and a sense of collaboration. And we do that effectively through a festival that we give annually, the fourth Saturday in October. We've gone into several different communities. Our last community was Springfield, between the corners of 8th and 9th on Pearl. It took us several years to bring Reverend Dennis to the table, but because she had the knowledge of her history and she felt like she was in a struggle to bring the historical sketch of her community to light, she came on, and it has never stopped. The connections, everything that you've heard today, it's just been overwhelming, and it's been an exciting journey for me. So Reverend Dennis, Mr. Truitt, and all Curly and Lynn and Joe McKeechin and everyone who has just come together, and Alfaro, come together to make that community a noticeable, living history of Gullah and Geechee has just been astronomical. The signs that you saw on the video originally are signs that we plan to put all over the community. The Gullah Geechee Culture Heritage sign itself is a sign that goes from Wilmington, North Carolina to St. Augustine, Florida. In Jacksonville, we have 4. One sitting in front of Matthew Gilbert on the east side. Most of you may know it as the Lower East Side, and that is because that particular neighborhood has a historical sketch that you haven't heard of yet, but is an important historical sketch for the community. The other sits at the Ritz Theater and Museum, and it sits there because it tells the story of La Villa. And if all of you have heard of La Villa, you may think of La Villa as being flattened or a part of progress for the city. But La Villa, before it was annexed into Jacksonville, was really known as the Red Light District. It was then kind of gentrified into the African American district that you saw maybe a couple of years ago. It was the home of James Weldon Johnson, Lift Every Voice and Sing. And in his books, he talks about La Villa and how his father was a minister and actually gave last rites of passage to several people who died in this area. But as I grew up, the area had become a little bit rough. And what you see there now was something that had transpired over maybe 30 to 40 years. So I'm very excited about what we may see in the villa in the future, and how that will impact the African American story. There were some questions that were asked this morning, and I'll be able to give a little bit of light on some of them. But at the end of this presentation, you can ask any questions you'd like. So this is our symbol, and we've used this for many years. We've just updated it to a new symbol. But Jacksonville Gullah Geechee has, we've had several different areas of advertisements that have come across. This is going to
The
be...
Gullah Geechee community, I really don't know much about, which is why I'm thrilled that Rance is going to show us all about how these folks are celebrating the history that stretches back to the colonial days. Let's all watch together.
But you see the covered areas, the highlighted areas here.
The Gullah Geechee community, I really don't know much about, which is why I'm thrilled that Rance is going to show us all about how these folks are celebrating the history that stretches back to the colonial days. Let's all watch together.
But you see the covered areas, the highlighted areas here. Black-owned land today, former slave families owned this land at one time.
The Gullah Geechee community encompasses 4 states: North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. That community was born out of slavery. The Gullah Geechee Culture Heritage Quarter is comprised of descendants who have passed on not only land, but the culture of foods, the culture of healing, knowledge. There are several Gullah Geechee communities here, and we're trying to identify all of them. Cosmo is one of our easiest to identify, one of the best that we have had so far for identification of the Gullah communities. A lot of cities were burnt out, and wherever industry went is where most people came. So you'll find in Jacksonville that there is a larger number of Gullah descendants than anywhere in the quarter, because this was kind of the most progressive area. The influx of individuals into this area was probably a stopping point for going south, because the first Underground Railroad went south. Florida was a free state at one time before it became a slave state. So the industrial nature of Florida was always here, and Jacksonville was not skipped over. I think our ancestors had in mind that if we lost our beginnings, we would not know from where we came. It's important that we set out to tell this story about our ancestors to our children so that they will be able to get the positives that were left behind and that spiritual nature that our ancestors left behind, to kind of make sure that they know who they are, where they came from, and how this all came into being. The making of the New World in the United States took everyone to bring us to where we are, and that positive image that we put into our children will make our children realize that yes, your ancestors had a part in the building of America.
It's important because this is where we're from, and this is who we are. And our children, the next generation that's coming, need to know this.
The beauty part of this community is that it still exists. You still have a lot of families, as was mentioned earlier, in this area. So today, it's very easy for them to come together and to look back at the history of Cosmo and their family, the family history.
It's just been a part of me. You know, I just feel like this community has been a part of me, and I could not leave it. I don't want to leave it. I'll put it that way.
There's still 25 families that are living in the community that are direct descendants from the Gullah Geechees, the original. All of those descendants are Reverend Vince, who was actually part of our great-great-grandfather, who was part of the Kingsley plantation. So there's a lot of history there. They hope to open a museum there one day, and they've got a camp coming up. If you want to try it, join the camp. It's a riding tour. Make a reservation. Call 904-365-1061.
All right, thanks, Rance. We'll be back.
Okay, and as you see here, we have mobile exhibits or displays that we do take from places to place so that we can educate individuals, especially children. We go into schools. I think this exhibit was done at Historical Springfield Learning Center, and it actually gives a conversation piece that extends not only from this exhibit but into the home so that children can ask their parents questions. And by doing that, they end up with more knowledge than what we are able to give them in any one lecture. This is a sort of synopsis of what we've done. We are in our 11th festival this coming year. Each year we bring in the Geechee Gullah ring shouters, who are, there's this happy group over at the side to our festival. And they bring in a set of songs and dance that take us all the way back. At the lower bottom of the screen, that is the Jacksonville Gullah Geechee Shouters performing at, I believe, Juneteenth. We also give a fishing tournament at different parks. And what we found with those parks is that parks and preserves are usually comprised of what used to be plantations. So this particular fishing tournament was given at Ready Point Preserves, which is in the same immediate area. You know, you have Ready Point Preserves, which was a part of a plantation. Old Chaseville was in that area, and then you have the McNeil Park, which was Zephaniah Kingsley's nephew. You move down to Blue Cypress, which was St. Isabel X, one of Zephaniah Kingsley's daughter's plantations. And you move further down the river to Jacksonville University, which was Anta Kingsley's plantation. We're going to move on down the river, go across the Matthews Bridge to Clifton, and you'll find the strawberry plantation where the house is still there. The graves are still there. As a child, I visited that plantation. There were no houses there, just a cemetery. And Anta Kingsley's actual plot was in the front yard of the house overlooking the river. So based on the enormous amount of history that's here, and the enormous amount of history that our children don't know, we give riding tours along with the festival, sort of explains the area. We, as an organization, are committed to stay in line with what the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Quarter Commission and Management Plan is all about. Because when we stay in line with that plan, we are sure to give the residents of each one of those 27 counties what the plan is supposed to do. Looking back at Cosmo, we are able to see that quite possibly the name of the area came from the cosmogram, and that cosmogram came out of an African possibility of the Congolese. That is one of the few things that we've gotten as we research into oral history. based on just that, I could remember my dad drawing that cosmogram on the ground for me when I was very young. When I saw the cosmogram, I was thinking, wow, I can remember him drawing this for me. And it's a circle with a cross in the center that actually explains life. What we have here is the Wale, or as Gullah Wale is how I learned it. Native American tribe located in the Sea Islands of Georgia. And if you can kind of think back in history, when the Spanish was in charge of this area, our border went across the St. Mary's River on into some of those sea islands. This is one of those maps that kind of shows the progression of the Carolina into Florida. No mention of Georgia. This map sort of gives you a great synopsis of the Native American tribes that were in this area, on around Florida and into Louisiana. And what you got here is documented evidence that there were people here before British or Spanish arrived. This is a 1930 map of Wale territory, and this map is in Spanish. It goes from the Sea Islands of Georgia to San Pedro, which is St. Augustine, which is further information that gives us knowledge of Native Americans and the inhabitation of Native Americans and Spanish at the same time. A lot of our history in this area is probably in Spain, in Spain or Cuba. And some of that information has been opened up. This, of course, is a corridor, as we know it today, which is, that map was turned sideways, but this is turned vertical so that you can sort of see it a little bit better. The Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor spans 28 counties, 4 states. While I was on the commission, we did a census document that showed there are probably about 5 million people right now who are descendants domiciled in those 28 counties. We had Chinye and Associates, the private entity that went in and counted. And that particular number, I feel comfortable with giving you. Those 4 states have over 50 million people in them. Now, out of the 50 million people that are in the states, South Carolina, Georgia, and North Carolina each have about 10 million people, give or take a few. Florida has approximately 20 million people in it. And with that being said, the 20 million people who are in coastal areas of Florida are probably Gullah Geechee descendants as well, who came in from the slave trade. This is the Wale Native American tribe chocolate plantation, which is on Sapelo Island. Sapelo Island is about 30 to 40 minutes into the sea from Darien, Georgia. And if any of you have ever been to Sapelo Island, you know when you go there, you're going back in time. Well, as I talked to Curly Key and her husband one day at Alexander Memorial, they said, I remember when this area looked like Sapelo Island. And I said, well, how did you take all of the progress? And they said it was a lot to take in. So as African Americans, we see progress. And sometimes we are, we have a feeling of being forgotten in the progress. So a few things that we do. We have Camp Gullah Geechee. This summer we did a coding camp with children where they made their own websites and we asked them to research the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor and actually begin the website from scratch and be able to build on the historical sketch of their culture and heritage. And also, we give them the footing for knowing that they can understand the internet and become not only consumers of the internet, but also investors in the process. This is our Blue Hen Project, and our Blue Hen Project is a group of older ladies, and our function is fighting for families. So we took the instructor who sits standing there. They all brought in t-shirts, and that's what this quilt is made of, t-shirts. And we had 12 children that participated in this process, and it was a very good summer project. This is part of our festival. It kind of gives you a synopsis of the festival and what we do. This one was at the Ritz, and we were at the Ritz for about 3 years. From there, we moved to several different places, but when we are at festival, we have from art exhibits to entrepreneurs that may be teenagers who make earrings. But we bring in a total sketch of what the day looks like for individuals who are in Jacksonville. And then we teach the culture and heritage as a result of that.
Go down to the arrow on the bottom left. Keep going. Not there. Keep going down. It's tricky.
Okay, so this is the riding tour. This is our cycling project. Our property is at 1017 West 6th Street. It is on the Urban Greenway, 4.5-mile train track that has an inner city riding camp attached to it. Emmett Reed, Malibu, Washington, tennis courts. We took 20 kids, an 8-week riding course, gave them all free bicycles once they logged 1,000 miles. Our Young Leaders Conference presentation was done at Alexander Memorial by college students from several different colleges here in Jacksonville, the Philip Cookman. And what they did at one of the commission meetings was they got together for 2 days. Ennis was a part of that. They took and Lynn, and we went through a lot of things that would bring them into the idea that they could become leaders, promote the culture, promote preservation, and look toward the future. They presented their findings to the commission, and the commission was very receptive of that day. These are some of the pictures from the festival. And of course, as we move into the end of this presentation, I'd like to thank all of you for coming today. I really would, because I think that the conversation has to begin, and the conversation has to be positive for the education, preservation, and development of a process that changes history. And the Gullah Geechee cultural heritage is a living history that has spanned from the 15th century in this immediate area up to present. And our children here today show that it's going to continue. As we seek to change policy so that the preservation of this culture is not forgotten, we will need all of you. And with that, I want to thank you for your continued support as we build Gullah Geechee communities and bridge gaps. So we're going to bring Ted up. I will take all questions.
Join the band. Hey, run along, come join the band. Already, join the band. My people, ready, come join the band.
Oh, no, you're good. So, thank you, Saundra. I want to thank everyone else as well who has been here to present. I'm going to have a word from Heather in just a moment, but I just wanted to I guess echo what I've heard in the presentations, which was thinking about the idea of there being 50 million descendants of Gullah Geechee that are still in this general area, right here in the corridor, which to me gives the sense that there's that dedication, that commitment to the ideas of pride, community, home. These folks are staying in the general area where all these generations have survived, and they're remaining resilient. And there may be some need for help to continue that. That's one of the reasons why we're here. The other thing was the idea of connecting with the young folks. That idea of entrepreneurship, promoting that, it's essential. And also retaining the traditions of the culture. We've talked about what is next. Well, we're getting a sense of what is next because you can utilize the traditions and find ways to generate perhaps financial opportunities through that. Tourism is another aspect, and we're looking at that with the commission and with other organizations. We do have a couple of folks here. Can I give them a shout out? Did you want to come up and talk?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought you were, I'm sorry. Another area that has also been mentioned as a community within these presentations is the Mandarin area. We have a gentleman here, Michael Myers. Yeah, he works with the museum there in Mandarin. Is that correct? Historical Society, yeah. Is there anything that you wanted to share about maybe that community or some of the work that's done there?
I bought flyers, but I see you already have one. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys on February the 22nd to the Eddie Stowe. There's an area in Mandarin that was named Eddie Stowe, Florida. And so
Can't hear him over here.
Could you stand up, Mr. Myers, so that we can all hear you? Thank you.
Well, I was saying that I'm looking forward to seeing all you guys on February 27th with the presentation about Eddie Stowe in Mandarin. So in Mandarin, there's a community right off St. Augustine Road. It was called Eddie Stowe, Florida, back in the days. And there's 3 churches, actually 4 churches in that area where we went through their records, and they have a really, distinctive and very detailed records of a lot of the descendants that came from Eddie Stowe, North Carolina, South Carolina, and it's so I'm looking forward to seeing you guys and come to Mandarin because there's Mandarin is trying to correct the lack of Black history, and like I said, back in the early 1800s, Mandarin had 1,200 people there. 900 was African Americans. And so come and see the school of the 3 sisters is there where they became an educated Black kids. They were arrested about 10 times. There's a rich history right there. And also we're actually starting a new exhibit about African American history in Mandarin. If you guys don't know, my wife and I, we've recently been dealing with the city councilman, so with the Cosmo, I would definitely love to work with them on how to get the commissioners and all that involved with getting the parks initiated because we just got the park renamed to Walt Anderson Memorial Park in Mandarin after many years. It was deeded by my wife's grandfather as a park, but it got named a Caucasian name, so we finally got that corrected. So just be persistent, and knowledge is so important, and history is so important, so I love history, so I can talk about it all day long, but come out and visit Mandarin Museum, Joan Park, and come to the lecture. You really get a lot, and also you'll learn about the Gullah Geechees that are in Mandarin also. So, and as I say, I'm a descendant of Gullah Geechee, and my family was in Titusville, Florida. And so, but my family came from Waltersburg, Bonneville, South Carolina, but all of them, they talk about the Gullah Geechee. And so look forward to seeing you guys.
A couple more quick kind of housekeeping things. So what Michael mentioned was a book about Edisto, which is written by a gentleman named Greg.
It's actually a good segue. I just wanted to jump,
Sure.
because when you came in, there were a bunch of papers on your chair. This is our way of helping you stay connected. Someone down here asked, how do I continue to be a part of this work and be engaged? A couple different ways. Number of different educational programs like the one we had today coming up in the Florida area. And Mr. Myers talked about this particular one, which is going to be a talk with historian Greg Estevez, who some of you may know, who lives here in Jacksonville. His roots actually go back to Edisto Island, South Carolina. So he's going to come out to the Mandarin Museum and Historical Society, that's this flyer, on February 27th to give a free talk about the book, and also to talk about how here in Jacksonville, in and around Mandarin, folks like Mr. Myers are trying to better understand, explore, and document that particular connection. I'll let you give the commercial for Heritage Day. But with respect to the corridor itself, so the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor comes to Florida once a year to have a public meeting where we invite people in, like Saundra, like Ennis, that are working on projects to document, preserve, and share Gullah Geechee history and culture. The next meeting will be May 16th here in Florida. We haven't decided which county. We have a newsletter sign-up list there. If you want to receive announcements from us, and in particular that date, make sure you sign up for the newsletter. We also, at those meetings, share projects that we're working on in other parts of the corridor that we think you all may be able to help us with. So, for example, we talked about Cumberland Island National Seashore Park. There used to be a lot of Gullah Geechee people on Cumberland Island. There are none anymore. They moved to the mainland. A lot of them migrated down to Jacksonville and into Florida. The National Park Service has actually undertaken a 2-year study to try and find those descendants. So before you leave, please, 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 if you know that your family history, your family tree goes back to Camden County, St. Mary's, Cumberland Island, let me know, because we want you to be part of that project. And as a part of that, historians are going to be coming down here into Jacksonville to collect oral history. So there are a number of ways to stay involved. That's a lot of information. Just sign up for the newsletter, and you will get emails from me once a month with information about everything that's happening across the quarter. And I also just want to thank Ennis and Saundra, but particularly Ranger Ted, who put all this together. Did you even tell them what your job was? I don't think you even shared what you, okay. Ted's an important partner for us, and literally we would not all be here today if it wasn't for him deciding to bring us all together. So I want to thank you.
And I want to thank you, Heather, because you coming all the way down here from Charleston, getting up at 6 a.m. to head out, shows the commitment that not only is she supporting us in this programming, but the commitment to making these connections and getting the word out, and really doing all that we can collectively to preserve this culture. So thank you. Thank you. As we mentioned, Saundra talked about plantations, and on to Kingsley. So one of the most prominent today is preserved and maintained by the National Park Service. As I mentioned, I work for Timuquan Ecological and Historic Preserve. That particular plantation is Kingsley Plantation. And so every year we have a Kingsley Heritage Celebration. And this year will be span over 2 different weekends. The first of which is February 15th, so that's next weekend, next Saturday, a week from today. And we'll feature the speakers, Dr. Janetta Cole, who's been an educator, president of Spelman, anthropologist, museum, history, art museum director as well. And then a performance by the Geechee Gullah Geechee that Saundra mentioned. So we have all kinds of brochures and flyers that cover all that information, so please take those as you head out. I know that Saundra didn't get a chance for questions. I know we have a timing thing. I also want Cindy to be able to come up and speak. I also want to thank the library for having us here. In fact, it wasn't all just me, because Cindy's the one that called and asked initially if we had programming. So we really wouldn't be here if it weren't for her taking the initiative. So I really appreciate that. And Justin, who's been our technical man today, hooking us up with everything.